I'm Anne-Marie from brambleberry.com. Today, I'm going to show you how to make this advanced cold process soap recipe. It's actually from my latest book, Milk Soaps, and it uses an in-the-pot swirl, some inclusions over here. Obviously, we have to figure out how to do that, and I'm going to show you how. And finally, making this an advanced soap making recipe, it uses milk. So why milk? Why an entire book about how to make milk soap? Well, milk has naturally occurring lactic acid, which helps to promote skin cell turnover, leaving you with softer, smoother skin. In addition to that, milk helps to create a creamy lather in your soap. Many people prefer goat's milk soap, but in this case, you can use any milk at all for this recipe. And in fact, in this book, I even show you how to make soap with camel milk, sheep milk, all kinds of, even nut milks. So for today's recipe, I'm just using 1% cow milk. So again, any milk is gonna work for you. And I'm using Brambleberry's Bergamot Black Tea Fragrance. And the reason I'm using this one is because it gives us enough time to work with the more advanced recipe here. Now, if you've never made soap before and you're like, I really want to do this, this is not the recipe to start with. So go ahead and look down below and maybe start with one of the 4 or 5 beginner cold process soap tutorials that we have here. The first step for this recipe is to prepare your lye and your milk. So in this case, you'll notice that my milk is fully frozen. Why is that? Well, if you put lye directly into just plain old liquid room temperature milk, the whole thing scorches. It turns yellow, it smells really bad. If we add our lye slowly to these frozen milk, what ends up happening is you'll still get a little bit of a yellow tint, but it won't be nearly as bad as like a fully scorched batch of milk, and it won't smell quite as bad. Obviously, since we're working with lye here, I'm gonna suit up for safety. The key to this entire process is patience. This probably will take a solid 10 minutes for us to do because we want to add the lye slowly to this milk so that way it brings the temperature up equally slowly. Some people even do an ice bath. So the first few of these, you probably aren't gonna notice a lot happening. So you'll be like, I'm just gonna dump all this lye in. Don't do that. It's pretty slow to start happening, this process, but you'll notice that the lye, once it comes into contact with that frozen milk, does start to melt the frozen milk. Now that this is getting a little bit more liquidy at the bottom, I'm gonna put just a little bit more lye in. Remember, we wanna do this really slowly, so we bring the temperature up slowly. Another consideration when making milk soap is that you can't see when your lye has fully dissolved. So we do want to be stirring extra and for an extra long time so we don't get any undissolved pieces of lye. You'll notice this is mostly completely melted now. And I've only got a few more spoonfuls left. And the key is just to keep stirring and slowly be patient. We don't want this to scorch. Right now, my temperature is right around 58 degrees, which is fantastic. It's going to get hotter. These last couple of spoonfuls are really gonna drive that temperature up. But we want this to be fairly cool. So the safe zone for this to not scorch and not get really smelly and not get really yellow is between 80 and 90 degrees. If you start getting warmer than that, you can put this in an ice bath, anything to just cool it down because you want it to stay below 80 and 90 so you get a really good color to work with and you don't have that weird smell. You may notice on the sides here, I've got kind of a weird thing going on, little tiny pieces of something. You know what that is? That is the sodium hydroxide or the lye binding with the natural fats that are already in the milk. So the more fat you have in there, say you get like a Nubian goat milk that has like so much beautiful fat in there, the more kind of little globules of really, this is almost pre-made soap in here, you'll get. Right now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna scrape down the sides too because lye can sometimes static cling to the sides of this and we don't want any lye that is not fully dissolved in our soap. So for funsies, I thought I would also just kind of show you what happens if you add to room temperature milk, there's a few ice cubes in here, and you add too quickly. You'll notice pretty quickly that we end up with some yellow looking milk, and boy, it starts to smell really bad. Oh, you guys, it smells so bad. It smells like ammonia. Ugh. Oh, the things I do for you. Note the color. This does not look great. It is disgusting smelling as well. Could you make soap with this? Absolutely, you can make soap with it. It's not ideal though, and it would really be hard to kind of over-color this in the sense that like you wouldn't be able to really get a nice blue. So this was whole milk that I used for this, and it has a lot more fat. And you can see that the lye is mixing with that fat to make this into soap already. Now that this is fully dissolved, you'll notice it did get just a little bit yellow. It hovered right around 90 to get to this color. We're at 87 right now. Another step we want to do for this recipe is sodium lactate. I use sodium lactate in most of my recipes, especially ones that are in silicone molds. Usage rate is 1 teaspoon of pound of soap. So we're going to do just about 1 tablespoon total for this recipe. It usually goes into the lye water. You can add it ahead of time. It creates a harder bar, and it also makes a shinier bar. So much about soap making is all about preparation. And so in this case, I've got my black oxide already mixed in. It's the usage rate is 1 teaspoon to 1 tablespoon of lightweight oil. So this is already mixed in. And then I also have my bergamot black tea fragrance fully measured out. This smells so good. It smells like bergamot, right? Which is that really luscious sort of tart orange. And then smoky from that black tea note. It's really delicious. Stick blenders here. Everything's ready to go. My mold is prepped. A final part of prep is making sure the mold is ready. This is the multi-pore sectioning tool from Bramble. It fits right into our silicone loaf, and what you can use it for is making multiple kind of side-by-side layers or partitions. In this case, we've just got one in the middle, and because we're going to be doing the double side. Here I'm pouring my milk and lye and sodium lactate mixture down the shaft of the stick blender, just kind of slowly to minimize air bubbles. And then I'm going to turn my stick blender on just in kind of very short little bursts. And I really want to move the stick blender around to get the full entirety incorporated in, rather than just putting the stick blender down and keeping it on the whole time. Since this fragrance is so well behaved, I'm going to fragrance the entire batch before splitting off into my containers. Give that a quick stick blend, but don't over stick blend. Remember, we need to get an in the pot swirl. To make sure my two sides are accurate, I am going to measure out how much soap I'm using, and I'm doing it by weight. So these two are the ones I'm swirling, and this is where my poppy seeds are going. This is just about 1.5 teaspoons of poppy seeds, enough to give a little bit of mild exfoliation and look really cool, but not over exfoliate. Then this is just about 1/2 teaspoon of the black oxide into the small one. If you do much more than that, what I found was it ends up looking less like a delicate swirl and ends up looking just the black just overtakes everything. I'm gonna trap my poppy seeds underneath the head of my stick blender, burp it to make sure there's no air bubbles, and then just turn it on real quick. And I'm gonna give this guy just a quick pulse. Make sure my trace is really good and workable. And then over here, ooh, hear those air bubbles? So now I'm just gonna kind of shake this because I got so many air bubbles and I want them to come to the surface. And then it's time for an in the pot swirl. So for this in the pot swirl, I'm gonna pour low and slow and also high. And I'm just going to barely do one quick mix. And I'm not even gonna use the full spatula, I'm just gonna do this guy here. And I'm doing a figure 8 because this will naturally swirl once I start to pour it in the mold. So I'm gonna hold this middle part down with one hand, and I'm just gonna do a little bit on one side, and then I'll do a little bit on the other side because we want the two sides to be pretty even in terms of the pressure they're exerting on each other. I'm pouring from one spot for my swirl. Lots of people go kind of back and forth. It's just a personal preference thing. And I'm filling this all the way to the top because once we remove this, it displaces quite a lot of volume. So, a couple different ways you can remove this divider. You could remove the middle part, you could remove the whole thing. I'm gonna try to get the whole thing out. Slowly, pulling directly up, and then there we go. Put it right in here. And then this is pretty much done. I'm gonna spray it with 99% rubbing alcohol, let it sit for 3 to 5 days before popping it out, and then it needs to cure. So we made this one last week, so it's just about 3 or 4 days old. It's got a little bit of a line here because there was a thicker trace, and of course there's a little bit of soda ash because we didn't gel it. It's another thing with milk soaps. You do not gel milk soaps because then you just scorch the whole thing. It looks beautiful. I'm very excited about this. I'm gonna use this brambleberry cutter to cut the entire thing at once. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean the wires on this multi-bar cutter just from the last time I used it because that'll help prevent drag marks going down. And then also the poppy seeds could get drugged. So I need to kind of be thinking about where I want the poppy seeds here. So have this all there and push down firmly, kind of core up. And there you have it. Perfectly cut, gorgeous bars of soap. But I do think there's a little bit more we can do on here. This particular recipe looks great with a bevel. So these just came out of the mold. They're gorgeous. They do have a little bit of the kind of milk ammonia smell, totally normal. That's gonna go away in about 7 to 10 days. Don't worry about it. Fragrance is doing its best, but there's still a little bit of natural ammonia smell. Also, I really want to get rid of this top, so I'm going to use the Brambleberry soap shaver to get rid of it. This is a really cool thing. It's got a little lip on the bottom of it. You slide it onto your table, so that gives you a nice, firm area to push against. I like to use rubbing alcohol to help with the entire thing sliding smoothly. And then you just place it on the area you want to shave, and you go down with a firm firm stroke. And I actually am going to have to go down a little bit further because remember how I said this had been a pretty thick trace? Didn't quite get the whole thing. This is, by the way, a blade, so keep that in mind when you're thinking about your thumb placement because you don't want to accidentally slice your thumb. Perfect. So now I have a perfect top and it's time to bevel. So another finishing touch I like to do for this particular recipe is beveling the bars. Now this looks great the way it is. There's no need to bevel, but I do think that it adds a nice finishing touch. Beveling is sort of a kind of an art to try and figure out when to do it. If the soap is too soft, it won't bevel. If it's too hard, it'll just crumble. So these soaps were made probably about 7 days ago. And then once you bevel, they come off, there's just a nice easy strip to come off. So I'm basically just beveling every single corner of the soap to get this nice finished look. And I use alcohol because it helps the whole thing slide a little bit better. This is creating a lot of scraps, but remember, it's soap. So you can use these scraps to put in other batches, make a confetti bar, make a really cool design. Like these would be super cool sticking out of a bar of soap. So lots of options when you have all these great scraps. Only one more side to go. I'm gonna keep beveling these bars, and in the meantime, you guys, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and also subscribe to the channel so you're notified every single time we come out with a brand new video. When you're posting your creations to social media, use the hashtag BrambleOn so we can all get inspired by what you create. Until next time, happy soaping. I'll be loving you forever. Sorry, we need to get me another song, you guys. Well, there's the Baby Shark song,
oh my God, you put that on your story like 3 times.
Yeah.
And every time I watched it, I was like, no! Now
Yeah.
it's stuck in my head.
Yeah. Baby shark, do 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 do, baby shark. I can't quit thinking about that cheese. Every single time we come out with a brand new do-it-yourself soap making or bath fizzy or gosh dang it, just shut up, Anne-Marie. Just shut up. Just be quiet. There's no need to talk anymore.
We make video. Please subscribe.